Hey friends, so we are here, week 6 of our Can You Relate series, and this week is going to be, I don't know, I struggled with it. The barrier that we're talking about this week is the barrier of breaking through what will they think, and we're talking specifically about shame. So for me, I try to write these discussion questions. Actually, you've been writing a lot of the discussion questions, but I try to formulate these sermon guides and this opportunity for discussion in groups. And this barrier, I have been like trekking with you for the last 5 weeks and like, oh yeah, ooh yeah, ooh yeah. But this one, I'm like, hold up, I don't get it. To me, shame and what will they think on a broad scale are just two very different things, two very different concepts. So why don't you share with everybody the heart behind this barrier, what we're really, just boil it all down, real simple terms to us.
Well, and we save it for last because I do think this is a tough one. Like what we define in the teaching, the definition of shame is a painful feeling of exposure. And if you just say that as a simple definition of shame,
right.
Nobody likes to feel exposed or vulnerable or overly seen, especially their stuff, like their brokenness, their messiness, their past mistakes and failures. And so I believe we tend to keep some of that stuff in, some of our past, some of our things that we wouldn't say to just anybody, keep it all in. We don't necessarily say what will they think as a barrier. But that's the reason we don't say the things that we struggle with. We're like, well, if they knew
the real me.
Yes. If they were to have the nanny cam on how I'm parenting.
If they really knew the struggle behind our doors.
Exactly. Like what they would think, oh, wow, you are a hot mess and back away. But what I believe happens is that more often than not, people begin to understand they're not alone. And that is the most beautiful thing about pushing through this barriers. I can't tell you how many times I've witnessed people realizing, wait, the light bulb comes on. Wait, you experience the same thing? You struggle with the same thing? Wow, I'm not the only one. And I don't know why we want to believe that no one will understand what I've dealt with, what I've done, and how that's affected me.
Well, it's such a tool of the enemy. If he can get us isolated and feeling like we're the only ones experiencing that circumstance or situation or whatever, then he's got us. He's got us away from others where we're not going to be encouraged, we're not going to grow, we're not going to learn, we're not going to be able to battle whatever those things we're battling. And even just you explaining it, before we go on video, we always talk through kind of what we're going to say. And even just the way you explain the definition and what this really looks like. I mean, it blew my mind up and made me immediately think about a moment not too many years ago where a friend of mine, we were standing in her driveway and I just, for whatever reason, shared something that was going on with our 16-year-old at the time. And she looked at me and said, wait, you've had to do that too? And then it was just this realization. We both looked at each other like, I had no idea that you were going through that when I'm going through that. And so we've always been able to connect differently since that moment because we realized in that moment that we were both dealing with the same stuff. And if you really want to know what the stuff was, I can tell you about it later. I try to be an open book because I'm the biggest mess of all, I feel like most days. So,
I love your authenticity with that. I think that's a little gift that God has given you to be willing to be that
my
open.
family would not say the same thing most of the days. But
before we started this, I told you off camera that part of my testimony, my story of God changing my life is before I became a Christian, I had a pornography addiction, but I waited years to share that because I was afraid of what people would think. And part of this teaching is sometimes you might be holding something in that you are ashamed of. It's a failure, it's a mistake, or whatever. And by revealing it, by sharing it with someone, you help someone else experience their transformation, their restoration from it, because they needed to hear like, wait, okay, so maybe God can help me overcome this too. I'm not alone. I'm also not condemned, and therefore there's hope for me. And I just wonder if too many of us hold those things back I mean, I always feel very honored when people share stuff like that with me. Like,
Same.
wow, thanks
Yeah,
for getting
sure.
real.
Yeah.
But then I don't turn that around and say, okay, well, Bill, why don't you share sometimes your struggles a little bit more often too?
Yeah.
I find myself holding back sometimes, and I think we miss out on those connections.
Oh, agreed. And I told you before we started shooting or whatever, just that if somebody were to criticize my marriage and the wife that I am, or the parent that I am to my children, like it would break me, you know? And so being vulnerable with all the ways I've screwed that up over the years is so hard because man, we just don't want what we think, what we perceive other people are going to think about us after that, you know, which is so dumb. It's so dumb that we all walk in here every single weekend carrying burdens that other people in this same space are carrying too. And wow, what a relief it could be if we would just all kind of, you know, lay it down so that we realize, oh, wait, it's not an island of one.
That's right.
It's an island of many.
You can wad up a piece of paper in this room and throw it, and you're going to hit
Yes.
someone that had the same struggle you did at some point in their life.
Yes.
And that's what we don't realize. And when we come in worship, we, you know, hey, we're going to praise the Lord, put a smile on our face, but we are all fellow strugglers.
Absolutely.
All of us
All
are.
the time. So that is the simple, you know, definition or just overview of kind of what we're talking about today. But I kind of joked with you, like you picked one of the passages that just makes my brain hurt so bad in scripture.
Yeah.
And so why don't you share that with us and just boil that down on a simple level too? Because man, reading this makes me hurt.
It is. Well, it's why I have a love-hate relationship with that passage
Yeah.
in Romans 7 because I think it's fun to read. The thing I don't want to do, I do. The thing that I hate that I do, and I don't. And I'm like, okay, Paul, what are you saying?
I'm a failure.
But the fact that it comes from Paul, you
Right.
know, that God used to write 14 books of the Bible, and he's like, the very thing I hate, that's the thing I do. The thing that I want to do, I don't do
it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, same. You know, the whole series is called Can You Relate? And I'm like, yes, I can relate to that. Yes, I can relate to that. It gets a little bit tough. He talks about the evil thing where you're like, okay, let's not call it evil. Come on now, you know. But the thing I hate most about the passage, though, is that there's a build to it. And it's building, and it's building. And you're like, okay, he's about to level the solution to us. Give us the 3 to 10 to 20 step plan to how
Sure.
to solve the
Right.
problem. Instead of giving us a plan, he gives us a person, Jesus. He goes, what a wretched man I am. Who can rescue me? Jesus. The end.
The end.
Okay. And yet we know that is the answer.
Right.
That is the answer.
Right.
And I think that Jesus embodies the, hey, I do not condemn you. I forgive you. And not only that, I can transform you and restore you.
Right.
No matter what you've done or what has happened to you or been done to you. Because that's another thing with shame. Sometimes it's not something I did that I regret. It can be things that happen to you that you feel very vulnerable about. And we hold those things and carry them things. I do think our culture, one good thing is that people are opening up more about their stuff. I think there's a lot more of an acceptance, maybe even a celebration of unique things, individualistic things. But I also think, even though I'm seeing that on a regular basis in pastoral counseling circles, people still hold back.
Right.
They do.
For sure. Well, I want everybody to think that I am a great wife and a great mom, and I am, but I screw that up on a daily basis, you know, and we all do. We all mess it up. There's nobody getting up on any platforms that are not just as messy as the next person.
Absolutely.
For sure.
If we could just all understand we're all broken and we all have our messes, and then break through the barrier, like let's not worry so much about what people are going to think of us. And I do think that, unfortunately, there are times when we get a little bitten, when we share a little bit. And I think that just causes us to keep that all in even more. That does happen. I don't want to say, yeah, you share something vulnerable, everyone's going to respond
abuses
perfectly.
that information or something.
Exactly.
For sure.
And I do think that's why some of the questions we ask in the guide is, talk to us about a safe person. Who are your safe people? I think that's fair. You know?
Right. And I think another part of growth in this entire series is what kind of person are we when people come to us? You know, I mean, I think we've been talking all about the barriers that we carry, but man, let's not forget that, you know, as we've kind of tried to knock these barriers down, let's be a people that welcomes others when they're ready to share their stuff.
That's
like,
true.
you know, I don't want this to just be one-sided. It won't be good if we're all ready to share stuff, but we can't handle it and you know, steward that well, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Be ready to, like,
Right.
I think we said this earlier, like, I am so honored when
Yes.
someone would reveal something like that. It's
Yeah.
personal. What an honor. You've just been handed a jewel, a rare jewel. And so, yes, receive it well and say thank you for sharing that with me, and I'm here for you. You don't have to make it up if you're like, hey, if you can't relate to that struggle, you don't have to, but you can be very, very safe for that person.
Yes, safe. That's such a great word for this kind of relationship. So in our next steps section, you wrote a couple of questions. You said you didn't remember writing these, but I think they're amazing. So a couple of next step questions that we're going to share with you that maybe can be discussion. You've got discussion questions, and so there's lots of different ways you can go with this. And please, as leaders, don't feel like you have to discuss every question.
Sure.
You go to the ones that, you know, kind of hit your group the best and see what the Lord does with that. But in our next steps section, the first question is, what is one thing about you that you are afraid to share with others? So Bill, tell it. No, I'm just kidding. So it's a great question, and it's not one that I think we have to go around the circle and necessarily answer. Just think about what that thing is, but piggyback right on the back of that. How would you feel if someone knew that about you, but still accepted you and loved you anyway? Because that is probably the reality of the situation. When someone shares, or when someone comes to me and says, this is my junk, it doesn't make me want to turn away from them. It makes me want to love them more. Yes, and lean in. And I think most human beings feel that way. You know, we allow this, you know, the enemy to keep that barrier up.
And I got to jump in and say, man, with men especially, I've seen this play out so powerfully when a guy will just open up a little bit. You know, we men, we sometimes want to keep that stuff in, put a brave face on, or just be silly and not go to those deeper waters. But when I see guys talking and say, man, this is my struggle, and like, oh, my lands, dude, I've been there, you know, and you start seeing that leaning in kind of thing happen, it's really huge.
Oh, yeah.
I think if we play the tape forward and realize that, wow, you could still be accepted by this person if you share this, and what would that do for you? And what would it do for the friendship that could even grow because of that?
Oh, absolutely. Huge. I love it. So I now like this sermon. It's
okay. Cool. Reel her in.
Oh, man. But I do just want to echo what you say about men being willing to share. You know, I think about my own home and, you know, Steve, and we have 4 boys. And when I talk, every now and then they hear it. But if Steve says something, man, they really lean into that. And so, yeah, man, don't underestimate the impact that you have when you start letting people know who you really, you know, just being authentic with people. I think it's so powerful. You're right.
And this actually, like all these messages, this one really kicks me in the gut, because I know that I think about what people think way too much in a lot of areas. And I think this plays out sometimes subtle, not just the big things, but like, you know, because if you're worried about what people might think of you, how does that affect everything you say and everything you do? If you are one of those people, I think this is a barrier that might be a daily thing that you have to tell yourself to break through. Like, quit worrying so much about what someone might think if I say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing or come off, you know, vulnerable or whatever. Just push through it and just be real. And what a freeing thing to do. One thing I love about the guy too, and I just want to say thank you for writing these. Thank you for doing these videos. I know our group has watching the videos. Of course, I'm in my group, so they're sick of seeing me talk. And so you being on there, it's like, yay, there's another voice and a face. But I love how I think you two give an opportunity for the group to talk about the series in general, which barrier maybe resonated with them the most. That's a good opportunity to maybe as a group, you all can talk about that and sort of tie a bow on the series. Like, man, what was the one big takeaway from the 6 weeks that you're going to keep letting grow in your life.
Absolutely. And we would love to hear that. If you have stories from your group, if you have, things that you want to share, this transformed my life in this way, man, we would absolutely love to hear that. We would be we would welcome any feedback for sure. Let us know how the discussion went. All right. So you're going to discuss now, and I don't know. It's been a great series, buddy.
It's been awesome. And I've loved doing this with you, and we look forward to doing it again in the future.
That's right.
Enjoy your all's discussion.
That's right. We'll see you.
Take care.